From the days of colonization until the 19th century, slavery was a problem in the United States. And through these years, Christianity was being taught to the slaves. In 1807, a new version of the Bible was published to teach the faith to the African people being brought to the New World. This version was revised for these people for one reason: to keep them in bondage. Why did it need to be revised, though? Many abolitionists saw the Bible actually taught against what was happening to these men and women. And it wasn't just the abolitionists, but those who truly desired for slavery. It kept parts such as Joseph being sold into slavery, which also highlights his rise in power. And most of Exodus was removed, except for the Ten Commandments. All the choices seem to hinge on obedience, and removes all verses teaching what the slave masters feared. Why were such large portions removed? What verses were so dangerous to the slave masters that they had to remove them from the Bibles to be used for the slaves? Exodus 21:16. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death. Well, guess what the slave trade was founded on? Exodus 21:20-21. When a man strikes his slave, male or female, with a rod, and the slave dies under his hand, he shall be avenged. But if the slave survives a day or two, he is not to be avenged, for the slave is his money. This is speaking of the death penalty for killing a slave. Many like to highlight verses 21, where the one beating the slave is not to be avenged if the slave survives. This gets misused as if the one beating the slave does not get punished. But it's just saying, if the slave survives, the person doing the beating is not to be put to death. But it pairs with Exodus 21:26-27. When a man strikes the eye of his slave, male or female, and destroys it, he shall let the slave go free because of his eye. If he knocks out the tooth of his slave, male or female, he shall let the slave go free because of his tooth. So if the slave was actually harmed, the slave was to be freed. So you beat a slave, the slave either dies, and the beater is put to death, or survives and is freed. This was greatly different than anywhere else, including early America. We see violation of all of these laws regarding slavery in America, and abolitionists know this, and use these arguments. This is just Exodus. We also have verses such as Galatians 4:7. So you are no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir through God. Speaking equally between slave and non-slave, and this is repeated multiple times through the New Testament, and comes from something revolutionary from Genesis. Genesis 1:27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Ancient nations spoke differently and separated men who would have power over others. But Genesis is clear that we are all made in his image, and that we were all equally created by God. I think we forget that the Bible is not meant to address all earthly affairs immediately, but rather act as a spiritual guide to bring us to the Lord. The Bible laid the foundations that would be used to fight against the evils of slavery. And I believe it speaks volumes that the slave masters need to edit the Bible to teach that slavery was okay, while abolitionists used the full Bible. There are certainly difficult questions about slavery in the Bible, but the one thing I can say is that God does not desire for us to own slaves. If you have any questions, ask me in my comments or message me. My inbox is always open, and I love responding to everyone that I can. And as always, God bless you.